All right. There are still goblin carcasses everywhere. You successfully disarm the trap and pick the lock to the door behind the throne room.
Okay, let's open it up.
All right. No sooner do you open it than your ears are accosted with a loud cacophony of silly songs and very specific industry advice.
Can we see anything on the other side?
It's dark, but you think you can just make out the shape of some robes and a microphone.
Oh, man, I knew it was going to be a Daily Solutions podcast.
It's going to be tough. That's right, a Daily Solutions podcast. Okay, everybody, make a saving throw against your wisdom to see if you get charmed. Ashkan is a salt gnome. You actually have a -5 roll against the Daily Solutions.
Okay, here we go. I rolled a 1.
A critical miss! And -4 with your modifier. You immediately fall in love with the podcast and charge into the room, vowing your allegiance to it over the members of your party, pulling out your scroll of remote music to leave an iTunes review in the process. Okay, everybody else roll for initiative.
All right, welcome everybody.
Hey there.
This is the Daily Solutions podcast.
This is the Daily Solutions podcast.
In case you were confused.
Yep.
click
Roll
the
your
wrong
own
button that you-
roll your own
that you
saving
did.
rolls over there if you have your D20s handy.
And
I'm Graham.
I'm Ashkan.
And today's question is, I have heard conflicting information from different people in the industry, sometimes about what seem like very simple things. How do I know who to trust?
Yeah.
Well, definitely don't trust us.
Yeah, that'd be your first mistake.
Yeah,
So
probably
whatever
the
we
other-
tell you here, you should leave with a certain amount of hesitance. Yeah, I mean, the
So
world is a complicated
It's
place.
it's hard out there, you know. It's tricky.
That's the thing is like it's just here's basically the deal.
Yep. No one knows anything about anything.
Basically.
even outside of our industry.
Yeah, people don't. There's not as much certainty and concrete truths in the world as you may think there are.
And I'm not even sure about that.
So with floating, you know, it's been around for a while, but a lot of the questions that we have coming up around science and research and a lot, especially about like sanitation and the equipment and stuff like that, like these are tough questions to answer, and they're technical and they involve chemistry and diseases and stuff like that. And
Math and writing.
we don't know. Like, there's not really a lot of people out there who know like a huge, insane amount about this stuff because there's just research that still has to be done. Like, we just haven't run some of the data, even have answers to some of these questions. So with floating, it's like when you get to these kind of rough areas and difficult questions, basically you're at like the edge of human knowledge. Like, that's it. Like, you've made it as far as people like know things in certain directions with float tanks, which is pretty exciting. Like, that's one of the cool things about being in the float industry is you're kind of like a pioneer. Like, everyone's out there just like pushing the edge of knowledge a little bit further.
I find it really cool. Yeah. And when we do run actual research experiments, we're expanding the base of human knowledge. Like, we're discovering things that no one knew previously.
But the frustrating part is sometimes you have real simple questions that just are like basic things that you want to do on a daily basis in your float center, and the answers are really complicated and no one really knows.
Yep, and you have to pay attention to two guys who podcast in their robes for answers, you know?
This is your first mistake. But, you know, so we start looking, when we look at float tank information, we try to look at other information out there. We look at recreational water like pools and spas. We look at drinking water. We look at other just chemistry involving Epsom salt. We look at
microbes on Mars.
Yeah, literally, like that is in one of the referenced little analysis of float tank sanitation. And this stuff can get complicated, and it's not just that we're trying to translate knowledge from a different field into our own, which is certainly part of it. Part of it is also these other fields don't have everything figured out. Like when we learn about pool and spa stuff, like we get to see where their edge of knowledge is too, and it's closer than you may think. Like how
that was the thing that really drove home how kind of in the dark we are with a lot of float tank stuff. Because I was just like, I think in the back of my head before we started going to these, you know, kind of multiple aquatic conferences per year and hearing different presentations, like I thought that as a species, like as humans, we had more knowledge about things as simple as water that we drink and bathe in, and instead, like, presentations are on this new research that's just coming out, where in my head I'm like, oh, I really would have thought that we'd have that figured out decades ago, you know? So yeah, as float tanks being so young and new, we're so far away from it, and far away from having, you know, dozens and dozens of labs with huge millions of dollars budgets that are running research on these things yearly, like pools have, you know?
Like we were in the last conference we were at, there was a full like day-long presentation about basically UV used in pools and the interaction of UV and chlorine. And like, you would be surprised how much we're still learning about how that works. And that's something, and we've been using chlorine for whatever, like over 100 years. And we've been using UV in pools with chlorine for a while. And still, this presenter up there was like presenting fresh new data about the interactions of these things. And everyone was like learning for the first time. And these are like the heads of health departments around the country. And in some cases from other countries in the world.
And like the head researchers of like, you don't get higher than the person presenting on UV at the time.
We've seen talks about hydroxyl radicals where these people who are like the most knowledgeable people about these things are just saying literally conflicting information, like opposite information from one another.
Yeah, both PhD scientists, you know, like, manufacturers versus scientists who are independent, conflicting information.
And, you know, it's complicated. Like when we were learning about the chlorine UV stuff, I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds of chemical reactions that can happen when you start adding things like chlorine, or when UV has its like rays affecting different things that changes like the molecular structure of things, and that chlorine interacts with sweat and, you know, makeup and pharmaceutical drugs that are in our drinking water that like puts into it, like, you know, and we don't know what all those things do. Like there's a result of like, you know, 200 different molecules all of a sudden like that are in a float tank or a pool or whatever, and we don't know exactly what each of them is doing. Like this, it's just the level of complexity that happens with some of this stuff goes up real fast.
And that's just water sanitation.
Yeah.
Like if you start getting into construction and best setups and soundproofing and things like that, like there's only so many systems that you can say for certain how soundproof they are. And even then, like if anything is done like slightly off in your construction, that can really affect it. So there's so many unknowns, not just, I mean, the water chemistry is a perfect acute example of how it feels to be on the edge of understanding for all these other aspects too, like down to marketing, best ways to fill float centers. You know, as a kind of new and thriving industry, we're also on the edges of understanding what goes into just filling up our tanks and being successful and having longevity. And some of these models that we're testing, we won't really see how many centers either succeed or don't succeed.
Or where construction materials will hold up for 10 years instead of 2.
Right, yeah, we're just nearing the year 8. So if things break down after 10 years and don't show signs of it beforehand, we don't even know yet, you know?
Yeah. So, you know, it's just, the more we've learned about things, the more I think we've realized that the world is a nuanced place. So if you're looking at information, if someone's telling you something, if it sounds really simple and clear cut and very basic, that should be a warning sign to you. That's what I've learned. If anything just sounds like real, like straightforward, probably there's more to the picture there, and you're only getting a very simplified part of the story.
Yeah,
and that's just the case with all this stuff. Like there's just nuance and asterisks and exceptions, and everything is within the realm of the context around it. You know, it's very hard to just say things in very concrete, simple terms.
Yeah, and some things are true. You know, like there are things that are logically true in the world. They call them a priori truths. You know, like 2 + 2 = 4. But as our good friend, the philosopher David Hume said, those are few and far between, and much more common is just truths we have to derive from whatever we see and witness around us, the environment, and try to put them together. And so, again, I just wanted to bring it back to, it's not just float tanks that are kind of nebulous and don't have a lot of certainty around them. It's the entire universe, just especially float tanks. You know, like in a confusing universe, they're especially confusing.
So just be careful out there. You know, keep a Spectix eye on where, you know, especially for things like the Float Collective or these other online forums, it's really easy for information to be
podcasts that are just
podcasts. You know, we're a very tight knit community, and so information can get bounced around and parroted very, very easily here because we're really good at communicating. Parodied. So you know, just because you read something online or read it multiple times, like, doesn't mean that a bunch of people aren't just saying it because they read it a month ago from someone who said something that may or may not have been totally educated on it.
Yeah,
So,
or something that they may have heard from a scientist who also didn't have the full story or know what
Right.
they were talking about. You know,
Yeah.
like stuff gets passed down, misinformation from the highest levels.
yeah.
Like there are scientific articles out there that have been keystones of kind of different progress in fields that are now being unable to be replicated out there, right?
Yeah.
Like science makes all kinds of mistakes.
There was
so-
like that big replication project that happened, and they found that what was it, like 40% of these huge important papers
yeah,
couldn't
yeah.
be replicated.
yeah.
So yeah, we have problems with solid truth
Again,
way high up the chain.
Confusing universe, especially confusing float tank universe. So yeah, I'd say be like, how do you know who to trust? Like no one. Don't like do your own thinking.
Build a bunker. Just get down in there. Get some canned food.
Yeah, and if you do want to know the truth about anything else, send it in. So go send in your own questions to floatanksolutions.com/podcast, and we'll tell you how it is.
Yeah, good, man. Good luck out there.
Yeah, be good. Be good.